computing and virtualization, and clearly we have never seen adoption like we've seen in the last several years, and we see that continuing. However, there's a huge install base. There's over $300 billion of software sold. 97% of that is sold on a perpetual basis or an annual basis. The cloud computing is sort of taking off, but it's a force of nature. But my presentation is kind of around the hybridization of how do you deal and manage your applications in the cloud, as well as the broader perspective of your install base. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so when you come to think through a huge problem like we're talking about that's transforming the industry on both sides of the equation. So on one side you have the producers, the ISVs, the Software 500. You've got about 1,000 intelligent device manufacturers that are slowly but surely getting into the software business, and there's a huge transformation going on in there. And then you have consumers, the Global 2000, as well as governments around the world. It's important to use a framework in order to kind of think through this. So when you look at the application lifecycle, we're using a model created by IDC. I tend to like it. It kind of fits in the areas that everyone's got to kind of think about. So when you look through this and you see, you're creating and managing applications, configuring those applications for customer usage. You need to entitle those applications. You need to understand what your customers are using, what they're entitled to. Right? We don't sell software. We sell entitlements to software and the right to use software. You install that software, and that's kind of changing, with the cloud and virtualization space. We'll get into that. And then, more importantly, it's kind of like control and optimize this. So, show of hands, how many folks are from a software producer in the audience? Okay, and how many are an enterprise or a government? There must be a lot of press in here, because a lot of hands didn't get raised. So anyway, so when you look through that, so that's sort of the landscape here. And traditionally, over the last 50 years or so, we've had homogeneous formats and license models. We sold primarily, that $300 billion of software, again, is on-premise software. There's a huge install base out there. It's not going anywhere, but it needs to be managed. There's a migration that will take place, and that migration from where you are today into the cloud or into virtualization or a hybrid model is going to be really important, and the tools that underpin that are going to be sort of your lifeline, because your business is run on that, both on either side of this, right? And so this migration to new models of computing is great, but you need to maintain your current business models, and you got to answer the mail for your businesses. So let's kind of get into what I'm talking about here. So creating and managing those applications, right? We need standardized installation experiences across all environments. When you look at the billions of dollars in R&D that build these applications, all is for naught if when you sell that application and all of a sudden the install doesn't work. It becomes a real problem. There's different formats. Those applications, whether it's on-premise, whether it's in an application that's streaming, whether it's in a cloud, those formats have to be understood and have to be bulletproof. The configuration, entitlement, and delivery is sort of the meat of what we do at Flexera. And I think, it's going to be, most people use our license models in the industry. We are the market leader in this, and we've been that way for a long time. You either build your own or you use ours. The electronic product configuration, tracking what your customers are entitled to, this becomes really, really complex in these new computing models. It's hard enough with the flexibility that we provided with license models to track all that software. It's been kind of around enforcement, where the puck's kind of moving is in, particularly in really into a usage-based model, right? Usage-based pricing, utility-based pricing, sort of like the cell phone model, right? Where you're going to buy so many minutes or some parameter of capacity, and as you use this, somebody's going to monitor and manage that, and you're going to be presented a bill, and then as an enterprise, you're going to basically look at that and kind of do a true up over time. So the entitlement aspect of this, when you start combining on-premise, virtualization, app streaming, cloud computing, having product bundles, if you will, that incorporate all that and help migrate the base of your customers from one computing model to the next. This is going to take place over the next, however many years. It's not going to happen overnight. And so it's really important that as you start doing these projects, as you start, coming up with a strategic roadmap, you need to really kind of map all that kind of stuff out. Again, from on a consumer basis or an enterprise basis, installation and packaging become really important, more so on the packaging when we start looking at application streaming and cloud computing. Your applications that you buy from whomever, that needs to, depending on what virtualization technology you're using, needs to be able to run in that format, right? It needs to be bulletproof. So understanding how to package applications, and for the next foreseeable future, 5 to 10 years, most enterprises will have multiple virtualization technologies across the board. So you're going to have to manage that entire stack, whether it's AppV from Microsoft or ZF from Citrix and VMware's Thinstall. The management of that becomes really critical. And then as applications start running in a cloud, they start streaming, you need sort of a central repository. When you look at self-service, bring your own device, these new kinds of computing models, nobody's asking. Any CIO will tell you their customers, with the introduction of the iPad and a lot of tablets, employees have a really simplistic understanding and application construct with an iPad, and they expect the same thing at business, right? They want to bring their own device, they want to run the applications they want to run, and it needs to be seamless. So having the concept of an application portal where you package all these applications up in whatever formats, you're going to have on-premise applications that people want to use, you're going to have applications that are streaming, you're going to have SaaS-based applications in the cloud. Managing that in a centralized way is going to be really, really important. And as you do that, you want to make sure, from a compliance perspective, that you have licenses to that software, right? Right now, there's so much out of compliance that's going on in the industry because software producers really don't give you a lot of tools to manage the applications that you're running. And so audits are up 500% year over year. That's not going to change. Software companies aren't growing organically like they used to, and it's because there's a lot of shelfware out there. Enterprise customers are looking at it saying, how do I optimize my cost and my spend? Am I getting good value for money? And that's why they're forcing sort of this transformation that's going on, and it's not going back to just an on-premise solution. So you're all here, the Cloud Computing Forum, major paradigm shift from client to data center. There's from traditional static, tightly coupled operating systems, apps, data, and machines. Now, everything's going to be broken into component pieces. From an architectural perspective, it's challenging. When you look at the component pieces of this, dynamic clouds, user-centric, universal clients, VDI is now the topic of the day for the desktop infrastructures, right? If you're not implementing that now, you don't have a pilot project, very shortly you will. This is a force of nature that is kind of giving flight to the industry, and you got to kind of think through how your applications need to run in these kinds of environments. And then the shift is really accelerating due to regulatory things. So when you think about HIPAA standards and and SOX and a bunch of other, you go around the world and the governments are putting constraints on these things, privacy, security, and so that's forcing cost reduction. It's also forcing a lot of the cloud and application virtualization. Digital natives, always connected, right? Everybody expects to be connected when you're not. It's not like the old days when you're looking for a 56 kilobit line. Right now, everybody expects immediate access 24 hours a day, no matter what they're doing, and they want access to those applications. And then rising costs, the economy is what it is, not getting any better. And so technology is enabling us and forcing us to do more with less. So that paradigm shift is here to stay. It's sort of like the evolution of IT and software. It kind of goes like this, right? We had infrastructure, device-centric. Now it's user-centric, right? Users want the freedom to do and compute when they want, where they want. And it's actually good for productivity, right? People work 24 hours a day now. Whether that's good or bad is a different thing. We used to have standard PCs. Right now, it's any device, anytime, anywhere. Bring your own device. A lot of the enterprises are reducing costs by saying we're not providing, or we're providing a stipend for whatever device you want. But they're not going to maintain it. Although memory fragmentation and all the rest of it forces this VDI infrastructure to come to the fore. Image and deploy. That's sort of been the way we deploy desktop software for a long time. And now, customers based on, the App Store from iPad, that they like the self-service nature of things. It frees up and provides a lot of creativity and productivity, but it also introduces a lot of complexity from a management perspective.